Well, this is probably going to piss some people off, but I've been running a software development company for 3 years, and I've seen a lot of failures, especially in SaaS. Helped a lot of people try and build their MVPs. I've seen them fail, not because of the product, but really marketing and product market fit issues. And I also actually tried to build a SaaS before this agency. And I basically think that as a vehicle to start with without funding, it's a pretty terrible business model. And I think you need funding to do it. That's why it's such a popular venture-backed case. So basically why VC funds go into that kind of business. But as a business to start with, especially if you don't have funding, but as a first-time business, I think it's not the best option. But the reason why I generally think it's such a terrible idea is because of the work required up front in order to make it work. In order for you to be able to sell your product, you have to build it first. And building is a massive task of its own. Like building a good product takes time, takes effort, takes money, takes resources, takes developers, takes a whole team to do it really, really well. And to be honest, many founders who start SaaS try and build the product before selling. They put loads of money and time and resources into building this thing, but then they go and try and sell it and they realize there's no product market fit. So people actually don't want to buy the thing, or they don't want to use it, or they purchase it and then they churn out. It's really, really hard to figure all of that out. You basically have no real way of discovering whether people will pay and use it and stick to it and keep paying for it and all these things until you actually have the product. So having to build that first means that you need a lot of capital or money or resources to put into it before you even start selling and getting a return on your money. Because of that, also, when you start selling, because SaaS is low ticket generally, it's very hard to reach a very, very high volume without a lot of distribution. So you also need to have money to put into a lot of distribution because, if you run a service-based business, for example, your first client can be worth 10 grand, and 10 grand is enough to pay you and maybe somebody else or whatever. Like you can make that work and pay salaries and things like that with one or two customers very, very quickly. In the SaaS business model, you don't have that luxury. If you have 10 paying customers on your SaaS platform and they pay you, let's say $20 a month, that's $200 a month that you have. And $200 a month pretty much doesn't afford you any kind of salary, right? And so even if you had 100 paying customers at $20 a month, you now have $2,000 a month, which still is not really enough to hire a proper team or anything close to it. Often I don't think people take into account the fact that distribution is really important, and it's massive distribution that you need. You can't have a small circle and like a network and start there. Like you need a lot of volume in order to make enough money to really pay yourself and actually have enough money to scale. And also you need to basically be able to front the cash for product development during the time that the product isn't perfect, because the product probably won't be perfect the first time around. And so I think these are just some challenges that people don't consider when they're starting a SaaS. Now, I will say on the back end of this is that SaaS is also a really powerful business model. If you understand a problem deeply, and or if you have a service that you keep selling and repeating, or I think that's one of the strongest business cases on actually how to build SaaS successfully. Is that, when you evolve from a service that you keep repeating, basically you're selling it a service, right? Then you sell a productized service. And as you keep doing that, eventually you build software around that service to eventually sell the software as a service, right? That's where the whole term comes from. Fundamentally, it must evolve from some kind of service that people are doing. I think that is also a pretty strong case to build it. But then obviously the other side of the kind of business world is go and get VC funding, get a bunch of investors to back you and put millions into your company. That's the whole business model of Silicon Valley, essentially. And I think in those situations, obviously, you have the money to stomach and front the cash to build an app that doesn't go well the first time, to get the distribution. Like basically, when you have that kind of money, you don't need to be worried about being profitable as fast. Whereas if you are going bootstrapped, I think it's a really hard business model to get right. If it's your first business, if you don't understand a problem super, super well, if you don't have investment, things like that, if you don't have a lot of cash of your own to front, that's a really, really challenging business model. And I think this is important to point out because a lot of developers think that building SaaS is like kind of the way to go. And I'm talking about bootstrap businesses and things like that, and they don't realize how hard it is to get off the ground and how unprofitable it is at the start. It can be obviously massively profitable down the line, but at the start it's really not. And in fact, most at like kind of big SF-based companies, also like VC-funded companies, they all lose money for a long time. And so if you're bootstrapping, unless you can afford to lose money for a long time, most of the time it's very hard for developers to just launch and succeed on their own. It's not to dissuade you from trying. Go for it, try, build it. You can bootstrap it, it is possible, but like know the risks. It's a great business model, but I think sometimes a little bit overrated in the eyes of some developers or some development communities. Like, it is not the only business model that a developer can pursue, and it is perhaps one of the most difficult ones to make work immediately. No funding, yes, bootstrapped, nothing else, you know? So I share these things because I've seen some people have some really painful mistakes from that. So maybe it can save you a little bit of pain as well. Anyway, as usual, feel free to comment any questions below and I will answer as many as possible.